God is good.
All the time.
And all the time.
God is good.
Nothing like getting you frazzled like a tablet that just won't stop locking up. What is the most repeated command in the Bible? Love one another. Jesus says, I think that's the greatest command. So maybe not quality, but quantity. The most repeated command in the Bible. What God says more than anything else. Over and over again. Fear not. Do not be afraid. That is repeated more than any other phrase in all of Scripture. And I'm afraid my computer is going to lock up, so I'm going to do that right there. Okay. All right. I might do that once in a while, but don't let that scare you. If you want to startle people, say, oh, a bee! Look, there's a bee. And what happens? Everyone's afraid, right? And how big is a bee? Not very big, right? And everyone has probably been stung at least once. And it's really not, unless you're allergic, it's probably not going to be the end of the world for you, right? But what happens? Your heart rate accelerates, you start to sweat, right? You get that knot in the pit of your stomach, your limbs go cold, and you're terrified. You know what you should be more afraid of than being stung by a bee is if bees were to die off. We want to use insecticides, we want to kill bees. 75% of all the fruits and vegetables you eat exist only because a bee pollinated that crop. 75%. And farmers and scientists and people like that have tried to replicate what they do, and they found that they can't. So instead of being afraid of being stung by a bee, you should be afraid of what happens if they were to die off. So Halloween was just a couple of days ago, right? So I thought this was appropriate. So these kids at school, right? The top one, Paul, what scares you most? Werewolves. Nina says, what scares you most? Sharks. Dylan, what scares you most? The unstoppable marching of time that is slowly guiding us all toward an inevitable death. Catherine, what scares you most? Dylan. What are you afraid of personally? You, yourself. I don't know that it matters how old you are, how young you are, where you're from, what your background is. There's something that troubles you. There's something that gets your heart rate up. There's something that causes an unceasing anxiety at times. What is it that personally has you scared? So imagine you're a young college-age student and finals are coming up. That maybe that's something that bothers you, terrifies you. I don't know. Whatever it may be, there's something for each of us. And I believe if you really want to get to know someone, if you want to say, oh, I know this person, you might know them at a surface level. But if you really want to get to know someone, you'll find out what really scares them. If you know what really scares a person, what they're really terrified of, what really keeps them up at night, then I think you really have an insight and you really get to know them. But take that a step further, right? So if you really want to know someone, you'll find out what they're afraid of. If you really love that person, then you help them conquer that fear. That's the big difference. So, Mark chapter 4, Mark records, on that day when evening had come, this is Jesus talking to the disciples, he said, let us go across to the other side. So they're going to go across the Sea of Galilee. Now, one thing that you might not understand with Jewish people is they are not a seafaring people. Water is part of their mythology. Water is part of their superstition. Water is a big plague to the Jewish people. So when Moses leads the nation of Israel across the Red Sea, when God parts the waters, it's not just, I'm escaping Pharaoh. This is a real test of faith because the Jewish people are not big sailors. When they did take sailing vessels, if they were ever in the Mediterranean, they never lost sight of land. They don't go across. So when Jonah says, I'm going to flee to Tarshish, he is really taking a leap of faith to get into a boat and go to what's probably Spain, right? So the Jewish people do not like water. They're terrified of water. They're afraid of the monsters that lie within. They're afraid of the storms that arise. And so they do not like water. And so when Jesus says, let's go to the other side, it's not that it was uncommon, because it's only about 12 miles across. It's not that it's uncommon to make that trek. But for a period of time, you lose sight of the shore and you feel very insecure. So, leaving the crowd, they take Jesus with them. They get in the boat just as he was, and the other boats were with him. The great windstorm arose. This is, Jesus, we told you this was going to happen. We knew this was a bad idea, right? And so here this great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking the boat. The boat's already filling up, but there's Jesus asleep on the job. He's in the stern of the boat, and he's asleep, and he's on a cushion. So we've got a diesel truck, and it's a Ram 3500. It's a decent-sized truck. It's a man's truck. I'm just going to say it. Right? It's got dualies in the back, and it's got a Cummins motor in it. And there's something about that Cummins motor. As soon as I fire it up, Jacob is asleep. No matter where we go, it's that truck starts purring, and the seat goes back, and Tammy got one of those neck pillows, and he sleeps. I mean, we might just be driving 15 minutes, and that kid is asleep. There's something about that motor. And I'm guessing that's the same thing for Jesus. I'm not sure. But he's on the cushion, he's asleep. And so they wake him up, right? You've got to hear the anxiety in their voice. You've got to hear the tension. You've got to hear the panic, right? Teacher, do you not care that we're perishing, right? Because the boat's filling up with water. It's a huge windstorm. It's the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, and they're all going down, and no one's going to sing a song about it. And so he wakes up. And he rebukes the wind, right? He talks to the wind. He chastises the wind. He puts the wind in its place. And he says to the sea, peace, be still. And so this obviously is going to calm the disciples, and it's going to alleviate all their fear, right? The wind ceases, and there's a great calm. And he said to them, why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith? And they were filled with great fear. So before they had a little bit of fear, but now they are filled with great fear, and said to one another, who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? Jesus knew they were afraid of the water. He knew they were afraid of storms. He takes them out into what he knows is going to be the middle of a storm. And we use this as a great analogy. Oh, God is going to calm the storms of your life. That's not what it's about. This is not about when you have work problems. This is not about when you have family problems. This is about power. And Jesus is so powerful, he commands nature itself, because he is what? He is the creator. The book of Hebrews tells us Jesus created the heavens and the earth. This is about his power. And now they're really afraid. Now they're really scared, because they're in the presence of such great power. In my observation, we as people, we are afraid of many different things. I think we fear rejection. I think we fear failure. We fear betrayal, making mistakes. Some people fear being caught. Maybe I should have the altar call right about now. Right? Being caught. We fear old age. We fear death. We fear poverty. Most of the things that we're afraid of on a day-to-day basis never happen. The things that really get the adrenaline going, things that we're really afraid of, most of those never catch up to us. But this isn't just my opinion right now. This is backed by science and data right now. Thanks to Facebook and social media, we live more in fear than we did before, but a particular fear. Now, as a culture, we fear more being judged and criticized because of social media. We fear that people are observing us more, but they're judging us more. It's kind of an interesting thing that's happening, but now everybody feels that they are perpetually being evaluated by everyone else. So you post something on Facebook, and science has shown if someone hits like, you get a little burst of dopamine in your brain. All right? Because they hit like to it. And so somehow they figured this out. I don't know if they wired them to a machine or what, but dopamine, that not enzyme, I'm drawing a blank now, that
Neurotransmitter.
neurotransmitter, but there's another word that we use though, a simpler layman's term.
I don't know that.
Hormone, right. Okay, so the neurotransmitter. Dopamine is released and you get a mini high for a second. When you post a picture of your grandbabies or what you cooked on the grill and no one hits like, you look at it, because you just posted the picture and 30 seconds later you look at it, no one's hit like yet. Why is it? They don't like me. People don't love me, right? And you can just extrapolate that as far as you want. So thanks to social media, we now feel more rejected than we ever had before. People are afraid to be rejected. They want to be loved. They want to be accepted. Fear, which is what I'm talking about, is triggered by both the real and the imagined. There are things that you really, can recognize and see, and then there's part of the things that are in our imagination. What you may not realize about fear, when you're in a group of people, fear is contagious. So, you could take something that's happening in politics right now, and you could begin to talk about that, and you could really stir up the feelings within the people that you're surrounded by. Or it may be, for example, the economy is turning down, and did you know that Eastman is going to close up next week? And they're going to have to roll up the sidewalks in this town. And now everybody is just all anxious, and then fear begins to be passed along and generated. I can remember growing up in the 70s and 80s and always worrying about the great mushroom cloud. TV shows, there's movies, there's books. I can remember having fallout shelters in the schools. I know we work on new schools now. I have yet to see a fallout shelter. What's wrong with these people? Don't they know? You know that the blue sign with the triangle, with the 3 triangles in there, fallout shelter, and we had the drills. So here I am in 5th grade in the Midwest, and we were right by a Nike missile base. We had Nike silos for shooting down. There were 16 of them in the ground, like within eyesight of my junior high. And so now it's all covered up. They have a soccer field. Their kids today have no idea what's going on under there. But anyway, I can remember, okay, here goes the drill, and everyone gets on their knees under their desk. Help me out. Really? I mean, come on, if that bomb goes out. But it's contagious. And also, something you may not realize about fear, think about the things that you worry about. Like, I can remember as a kid, my grandparents worrying about gypsies, real gypsies, not, right? Okay, because their parents came from Germany and from Bohemia, right? So my grandparents are like first generation American kids, but their parents still speak another language, and so they worry about gypsies. Have you ever encountered a gypsy? I don't know that I have, right? So what I'm saying is fear is contagious, but it's also intergenerational. Some of the things that you worry about, some of the things that consume you, are things that you have learned. They're not necessarily real, but they're things that you have learned. So all this talk about fear. Is fear rational? Is fear necessary? Is there anything healthy about fear? So Tammy and I are coming down 26 yesterday. I'm going 80 miles an hour unintentionally. I see a state trooper 60 miles an hour. What do you think I did? Put Tammy right up against the windshield, right? What are you doing? Well, there's a state trooper right there. Right? I see an officer, and immediately I slow down. Right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's smart, if you ask me. I also, now that Clay's gone, we hardly ever use milk like we used to, but we still have milk in the fridge. But if we're going to cook something that has milk, I do 2 things. First, I put my glasses on, and I look at the expiration date, and then I open it up and I do what? I smell it. Why? I'm afraid, right? All right? How many of you here lock your doors at night? I grew up in a house where we didn't have, this is true, we didn't have a key to the house. My entire life until I moved in with Tammy when I was 18. I never had a key to the house. We never took the keys out of our vehicles in the driveway. If someone needed to move your truck, the keys were in it. You didn't take the keys out of your vehicle, and we didn't have a key to the house at all. It wasn't like I lost mine. We didn't have one.
In Chicago?
Well, we lived outside of Chicago, 40 miles. Yes. You're thinking Chicago, there were parts of Chicago back then that weren't. The South Side was always dangerous, right? Jim Croce knew what he was talking about. He was saying about Leroy Brown. But, yeah, so, yeah. Now you lock your doors at night. Why? Is that smart or not? I think it's smart. So there are parts of fear that are necessary. You see a snake on the green belt, you need to step back from it, right? You see someone suspicious around your house, you need to be paying attention to that. There are things that are necessary, but what I want to get to, unresolved fears. Listen to me carefully, because this is an important part of your spiritual life and just being a healthy life. Unresolved fear builds up tension. There are a lot of things that happen when you face fear. Sometimes you get angry about it. Different processes take place. But eventually, if you don't resolve a fear, you can no longer relax. There's a tension that builds up. You carry it like a weight. You can't relax. And then another thing that happens is your ability to think critically, and I don't mean criticizing others, but logical thinking is shut down. There's something that takes place when that fear is consuming you and you can't relax, which means you're starting to lose the ability to think through how to fix the situation you're afraid about. It probably didn't sound good grammatically. Whatever it is that you're fearing, right? And so you say, well, okay, so I can't really think through it, but big deal. But guess what the next step is? Science shows us that tension makes it hard to think clearly, causes us to get sick. And I'm not just talking about stomach ache and backache, which is a true result of it, but unresolved fear develops a tension that weakens your immune system. And you know what the final phase is of unresolved fear? After you go through all of these inabilities to relax, get rid of the tension, be no longer angry. The end result, doctors tell us. And I didn't read this on WebMD either, Rodney. Researching the topic of fear, I found out it leads to depression. Do you know anyone who's depressed? A major root cause of depression is fear. So we got to be able to handle our fears. Now, I've said everything that I've said to introduce you to the sermon. God doesn't say your fears are unfounded. Okay? I do that as a parent. The kid is upset because it's a thunderstorm. That's not real. Don't worry about it. You're going to be fine. God's better than that. God doesn't say your fears are unfounded. There might be something real there. He doesn't say your worries aren't real. That is huge. He doesn't make light of the things that you're worried about. What he does say is he is more. He is more powerful. He is more able. He is more concerned. So he doesn't say don't worry, but he does say I will protect. I will provide. More importantly, I will be present. That's what Jesus does in the storm. He protects them. He's present with them. And all I'm saying is, what more could we ask for?